Hello there and welcome back to another video on this channel, all related to psychology, wellness, self-love, and of course relationships. Today's topic comes from a question that I got on Instagram, and it's not the first time I've been asked this, and I don't suspect it'll be the last. It's such a popular topic. And also I've been asked this before when we had some relationship segments on 702 radio. So it is important to unpack these types of topics and anything that might come as a microcosm from it. So today's video is about signs that you may be in a toxic relationship. My name is Tamara and I'm a psychologist practicing in South Africa, and I hope that this channel can help to elucidate, or at least start to open up a platform of understanding your world, your narrative, as well as what is going on in your relationships. And then you can take it from there to start either a therapy journey, an introspection journey, or something around that. Okay, so let's look at some of the signs that you may be in a not so great relationship that is actually meant to uplift you, but at the same time challenge you. One of the first signs that you're going to notice that you're in an unhealthy dynamic, or a tense or critical or type of a relationship where it's very toxic, is you dealing with a person that is what we call a high conflict person. They present as either covertly or overtly very tense, angry, defensive, and they often feel very hard done by the world around them. They're extremely difficult to please, and they have what we call an external locus of control, which I briefly outlined in a previous video. What that means is that things happen to them and they don't feel any type of accountability, or very little, for their role in their problems, very little responsibility. They often have a victimized mentality, and how they present in terms of tenderness, gentleness, empathy, and kindness is none of those things are consistent when it comes to you, the loved one, the spouse, the sibling, the co-worker, the employee. You don't often feel a warmth or empathic response from them. They often are extremely angry and rageful. Now, there's a big difference between anger and rage, which I think I'll speak about in another topic, of how we can express healthy anger. But these types of folks constantly badger you when they're very angry. And what it will cause is for you to walk on eggshells. Through a difference with anger and rage, it's expressed in a healthy way towards problem resolution. That's more normative anger. So these types of people, a high conflict person, is actually not looking to solve problems. They're just very rageful. They react very much in a tantrum or a very unstructured, uncontained, angry response. They are quite antagonistic and aggressive, and it would lead you as the person on the other side to be quite submissive to what they want over time, which leads to them being very controlling and restricting you towards their narrative. And because of your submission in trying to keep this going, it will just lead you to become quite enabling into what they want. Arguments with these types of people seem to never end, or they reoccur in cycles where there was no stimulus on your side. So this is very, very different from an unresolved issue that's normal and healthy in relationships, because we tend to have the same 2 or 3 fights over and over and over again until it's resolved. These types of arguments that I'm talking about with a high conflict person seems to come out of thin air, unprovoked, and the accusations that are laid against you are very unfounded. So you constantly feel like you are on trial for something they feel that you did, and you will always need to be very careful about how you say things and what you say. You tend to often be very blamed for something that has happened to them, and that you scratch your head and you say, what is it about me that caused this reaction? All of this leads to a person feeling very guilty, a bad person overall, or not good enough constantly. On the high conflict side of the person, what they have is very little self-reflection on their contribution to the dynamic or the problem. They feel it is your fault, and they feel victimized by you. They struggle very much to handle accountability for when you express your feelings, you will be called harsh, or that you make things bigger than what they are. But actually, your feelings are always valid. Your perspective is always valid. These types of folks are also very difficult to give feedback to, and they cannot process criticism on their behavior at all, or very, very minimally. Holding them accountable leads to rage or threats of self-harm, so you will avoid confronting or expressing your feelings completely. What that looks like is sometimes they'll play a bit of a victim response and say, oh, well, I'm such a burden, maybe I shouldn't be here anymore. Or they'll tell you that they have something, a weapon close to them, or pills or something close to them, to try and render you quite at their disposal. It's a manipulation tactic. And that's very different to someone who is really in a lot of distress. They really are in distress and they want to actually help themselves. They seek therapy. They go to a psychiatrist. These types of folks don't do that. Once you start to tell them, look, the other night you scared me, or I worry about you, is they don't follow up with action. So in these relationships, there isn't much safety for you to express your feelings on their behavior, because it's either completely invalidated, or the feelings that you express will be completely turned against you at a later stage. They also exhibit a lot of insecurity in them needing constant or incessant reassurance. They will use a lot of manipulation, such as guilt tactics, to make you earn their love. So they'll say, if you loved me, you would do this. They'll either say it verbally or through their behavior. They'll punish you with silent treatment and use mechanisms in a family or in a system, organization, anything like that, relationship, such as flying monkeys, family mobbing, and triangulation. I personally feel all three of these topics are such big topics, they will need to be really unpacked in other videos, but I'll briefly outline them. What all three of these tactics have in common is that this person needs to scapegoat you. So how they do that is they try and recruit other people together. Flying monkeys, which is a Wizard of Oz term, or their family mob. And they bring at least one person, the triangle, to keep you out. And you will be scapegoated. So they start to influence other people about how bad you are. So often the person on the receiving end feels extremely ganged up on. They feel mobbed. They feel like they're this terrible person. The high conflict person will often say things like others agree with them that you are bad. So that can be family members, siblings, a partner, anything, even a therapist. So the use of family monkeys or family mobbing is to scapegoat you as the source of the problem. Another big warning sign or red flag is they use mechanisms like gaslighting and invalidating, which will make you second guess yourself, and your reality as theirs is actually the dominant narrative. Your reality doesn't really exist to them, or it's minimized. Relationships should be reflective by a mutual co-created space towards problem solving. The underlying agenda on the high conflict person's side is that they want to control. They don't actually want to problem solve. You should be able to maintain your own thoughts and feelings and beliefs, but they expect you to have one mind and to do things and think things like they do, and to share the exact same beliefs. There's very little tolerance with a difference of opinion or worldview. They have a my way or the highway mentality. Their worldview is predominantly that they see themselves as the victim and things happen to them, and people or things are unjust as well as people are out to get them. So it's kind of a persecutory anxiety. They feel persecuted all the time. When you yourself are not being scapegoated, you will notice that they find other scapegoats to project their own inner inferiority or feelings of being unworthy or not good enough. So often what you feel as a projection is the person, the high conflict person, feeling extremely not good enough. They're actually looking for engagement and being enabled against this invisible scapegoat that could be you or somebody else, that is usually an internal projection of that persecutory anxiety. You will feel robbed at times of joy, hope, and energy. And if you do have bouts of joy, you often will feel so guilty because they are not happy or successful or whatever narrative they aspire to. I often tell people to pay attention to their nervous system or body. around them or in anticipation of seeing them. What does your body tell you? Do you feel tense? Does your body ache in certain spots? Back, lower back, knees, neck, all those things. Do you have stomach tightness, nausea? Do you feel physical and psychological relief when they are not around you, when you're away from them? So when they leave to go to work or something. The same behavior that is expected of you does not apply to them. You should always be available and always help them, but when you have needs, you will either be called needy or too much or selfish. Another big red flag is they cannot apologize and show empathy towards you. They have little compassion and empathy for you. If ever you do experience empathy from them, it is often experienced as pseudo-empathy. Pseudo-empathy is not real empathy. It's actually very transactional. So it sounds like empathy, but it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel comforting. It is usually used to get something in the transaction. What they're seeking is to often be enabled towards their predominant worldview or narrative by use of those flying monkeys, manipulation, enabling, and they don't want to problem solve. Some key questions we need to think about is, and I often get asked this, why do people stay in these dynamics, which is a very complex question. In a general sense, they're used to this familiar behavior. They either come from it in family or they've been guilted into thinking that's what they deserve. Another key question, which I will be answering more in detail on in the next video on Friday, is how do you manage these dynamics, which is going to be a lot to do with emotional distancing, boundary setting, and all of those things, especially if you're co-parenting with somebody like this with a child. Those things are so important to look at, even if it's a boss, a sibling, a partner. And the other question I really think we need to think about is, and I get asked this as well, is can you heal these dynamics? The simple answer is yes, if both parties are willing to acknowledge the problems in the dynamic and moving towards a healthier dynamic. However, the personality of this person is not really likely to change, only slightly, minimally. The behaviors can, however, alter depending on the level of accountability and responsibility taken. So that's the key difference, is that we've got to think about, are you trying to fix this person to love you in a way that's healthy? And you've got to start to think about what keeps you in the dynamic. Is it your own guilt? Do you feel like a bad person? All of those types of things. But in our next video, I will be speaking about how to manage more of these types of behaviors, what to do. If you want to get out, if you need to try and rebuild your identity out of it, or if you need to stay, want to stay, then realistic outcomes for it. That will be the next video on Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in and all your comments. I appreciate them so much, and I'm glad that they are helping. If you are welcome to leave a comment below, or you are welcome to send a message privately on Instagram at The Shrink. All the best.